Hi everyone. Lost in the hullabaloo this week, that is the great British Brexit balls up that has obviously dominated the news cycle. Liberal Democrat MP Norman Lamb tabled a vote that would bring forward a bill that could decriminalise or legalise cannabis, to change the law basically. It's just a vote to bring this bill forward, to have a discussion to change it. And when he brought this bill forward on Tuesday, he made a great speech, and I want to show it in full because it was just excellent. Enjoy this.
We still criminalise thousands of people every year taking up precious police time which could be used to fight serious crime. Careers are blighted for using a substance which no doubt many people on the government benches have used at some stage in their lives. Meanwhile, the most harmful drug of all is consumed in large quantities right here in this building. Alcohol leads to violence on our streets and behind closed doors in people's homes. It destroys families up and down our country, yet we tax it and the Exchequer benefits enormously from it. Isn't there a dreadful hypocrisy that we allow our drug of choice whilst criminalising people who use another, less dangerous drug, many for the relief of pain? My bill, Mr. Speaker, offers a more rational alternative to this mess, with strict regulation of the growing, sale and marketing of cannabis, with an age limit of 18 for the purchase and consumption of cannabis, with clear controls over potency of what is sold in licensed outlets. We can at last start to protect children and teenagers. We can at last treat all those people who suffer acute pain or who have conditions such as multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's and epilepsy with dignity and respect. We can end the shameful treatment of these people as criminals. We can at last end the extraordinary practice of handing billions of pounds every year to organised crime. We can instead start to tax the sale of cannabis so that revenues can be used for good purpose: public health, education, the NHS, schools and the police. We can start to take some of the violence and intimidation off our streets and restore order in our poorest communities. We can free up police time to focus on serious crime. Mr. Speaker, this is rational, evidence-based policy making. It's time for this country to act on the evidence and to protect children and young people from harm.
Now, I'm sure you all agree that was just a great speech. It was a fantastic speech. He nailed pretty much every point that he needed to make there. And I just want to touch on a few things he mentioned there. He said how ridiculous it is to criminalise the drug. And it is. It's ridiculous. And by criminalising it, you're actually going against your so-called war on drugs. Because when you criminalise something like cannabis, people, obviously, if they want it, have to go to somebody who, let's face it, a lot of the time, are not the sort of people that you want to be around for any length of time, even if it is only 5 minutes, 10 minutes a month or whatever it is. So you're putting yourself around people who obviously also, maybe, a lot of the time, sell harder drugs. That's the only way cannabis is a thin end of the wedge, which is an argument that has been... You ask anybody over 60, they will give you that argument. They'll say it's the thin end of the wedge. I promise you they will. I've asked members of my family, and they all say the same thing. They've come around as they've been educated, but this is what it all comes down to. Education. That's what is needed. And he made other great points there. I'm not sure about the 18 age limit. That's fine, I suppose. Although you could make an argument that it's 21 or even 25, but I think 18's fine. Alcohol's legal at 18, so I don't see any reason why it should be any different, but maybe people can make cases for it to be 21 or 25 based on mental health, that sort of thing. That's an argument that you can have if the bill was brought forward. It's a discussion you could have. That's being adult about the situation and not being stuck in your beliefs and not listening to reason. And he said right at the very end there, protecting children. This is protecting them from growing up and being around a criminal element. Because if you decriminalise the grub, most people at some stage will smoke cannabis in their lives. Most people, as he said there, in the House of Commons will have smoked it and used it. So it makes no sense to do things the way we are and to have the laws stay. They're so archaic, and it's standing in the way of progress. Just look at the countries around the world that are legalizing it. Look at America now. It's legal in 30-something states out of 50 for medical. And, more and more states are coming on board for medical and for full legalization. And obviously now you've got Coca-Cola taking out patents on marijuana-infused Coca-Cola products. As soon as the companies get involved, that's it. It's game over. Now, by doing this, you're just delaying the inevitable and you're standing in the way of progress. It makes sense to change this law. So obviously, with it being, making sense, you will not be surprised to learn to hear that it was voted down by 14 votes. I want to say a big thank you to Phil James, who's a subscriber of the channel. When I saw this, I retweeted. I gave a comment on Norman Lamb's speech, and he retweeted it very nicely. And I remember thinking, I've got to look the next day as to who voted against this. I want to be naming and shaming people. And he was ahead of me and tagged me in the post the next morning, which was great. Just want to quickly give an overview here. MPs blocked by a narrow margin an attempt by Liberal Democrat MP Norman Lamb to bring in a bill on legalising and regulating cannabis on Tuesday by 66 votes to 52. The vote was to bring in a bill that would later progress to a vote on changing the law, not to change the law itself. Like I say, this is just to bring the bill forward and have a discussion. Maybe change the text of the bill and come to an arrangement and then have a vote. This is not even letting it get to that stage. It's not even. No, we're not going to talk about that filthy drug. The vast majority, led by Steve Double MP, it says here, who called for a ramping up on the war on cannabis. Really? A ramping up on the war on cannabis, Steve? How's that gone so far? There are more cannabis farms in this country than there are police officers. How are you going to tackle that? How are you going to ramp that war up? Whilst at the same time cutting 22,000 police officers' jobs? Have you got any brains in your head at all? Or is it your bank balance you care about more? The vast majority of those opposed were predictably Tory MPs, but 7 Labour MPs and 1 SNP MP, and of course several DUP MPs, helped tip the balance in the no's favour. And here are the 66 who voted against it. You can see their raft of Conservatives, including Ian Duncan Smith and DUP at the top. Mike Gapes, who's from the Labour Cooperative, he represents both. Some more DUP and Conservatives. There's Dominic Grieve. He voted against it. Then we come to Kate Harry. Not content with pissing people off by voting against their wishes with regards to the EU, she's now voting against their wishes with regards to the decriminalisation of cannabis. Some more Conservatives, and Chris Leslie, who's another from the Labour Cooperative, more Conservatives, more DUP. Obviously Ian Paisley Jr. voted against it. The DUP, I suspect, don't believe in cannabis since it isn't mentioned in the Old Testament. Jacob Rees-Mogg, obviously, he voted against it. He's from the Old Testament. And John Speller, another Labour MP. Gavin Shuker, Labour Cooperative MP. And then down at the bottom, here's my favourite one. Why am I not surprised, Chucker? Why am I not surprised you voted against something that is sensible, that your supporters support? And I'll get to that in a second. Why am I not surprised? Not content with pissing people off with your banging on about another referendum over and over again. Not content with trying to veer the Labour Party towards a central neoliberal platform that people are hating and rioting against in France right now. You think that's the way forward. Not content with doing that. Not content with, sticking up for Israel's crimes against Palestine by muddying the waters with the anti-Semitic conversation, not content with any of that, you're now pissing people off by voting against decriminalising a harmless drug. I say most people, majority of people, this is YouGov poll from March this year. I suggest the figures are even higher now because they are going in one direction and one direction only, and that's in overwhelming support. If you combine decriminalisation with legalisation, there you go, over 51%. And that's without, MPs having a big push and having a talk about this and having an adult conversation, a discussion around what's sensible and the way forward. Overwhelmingly, though, the younger you get, the less indoctrinated you are to the propaganda surrounding cannabis that there has been over the last 40 or 50 years. This is why the older you get, the more against it they are, because they're indoctrinated to the propaganda that we've been fed by the government, remember, who have been against this drug. This harmless drug. When you actually combine under 25s, voting age, under 25s, that's almost 2/3. That's almost 2/3. This is going to be legalised eventually, Chucker. Why are you standing in the way of progress? And Kate Hoey and the others. I expect it with people like Jacob Rees-Mogany and Duncan Smith, but come on, And with that in mind, that's where I want to end this video on it, really, because I want to ask the question of, is it the Labour CLP I've got to ask, of Vauxhall and whatever, which is Kate Hoey's constituency and Chuck Mooner's constituency. Is it the Labour CLP I've got to ask this question of? This mandatory reselection, guys, when does it start? Any chance it could start before we get another election? Just asking for a friend. If you like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe and click the bell below so you get a notification of when I drop further videos. Independent voices like mine, I'm sure you're aware by now, are being censored across all social media platforms, so please like and comment on the videos. That really does help the channel out, and share the videos wherever you can to grow the audience. If you can, please support me on Patreon. You can do it for as little as $1 a month. I cannot do this without your help. I rely on your donations. Thanks very much for your support. It really is appreciated. Until next time, peace and take care.